fellow Toastmasters, honored guests. On the summer solstice in 2012, the longest, hottest day of the year, I was wandering through the red, dusty expanse of Moab, Utah. The city of Moab is home to rich uranium mines, as well as a number of national parks. The most famous of these is probably Arches National Park. And if you have only a short time to spend in Arches, the gate ranger will tell you, go see Delicate Arch, because one of these days you'll wake to the news that Delicate Arch has fallen. You can probably imagine it, a fragile red rock formation in the shape of a wishbone that graces everything from posters to calendars to postage stamps. It's one of the more iconic images that comes to mind when somebody talks about national parks. The national parks come in all shapes and sizes, however. I'd like to tell you some basic facts about the Park Service and about some of the more unusual parks you might not be familiar with. And by then, I think you'll be wondering if any of these treasures is here in Nebraska. Indeed, our state is home to some national parks that you should know about, and I'll tell you about a few of them. Within a few minutes, I'm sure you'll agree with historian Wallace Stegner, who said that the national parks were America's best idea. First, a few basics. 2016 marks the 100th birthday of the Park Service, although the first park predates the agency. Yellowstone National Park was created in 1872. Then in 1916, President Woodrow Wilson founded the Park Service, a federal agency within the Department of the Interior. It takes an act of Congress to create a national park, and Congress oversees the agency's nearly $3 billion annual budget. There are currently 409 active park units, and these include National Historic Sites, National Monuments, lake shores, seashores such as Cape Cod, and many rivers and trails. 22,000 employees staff the Park Service nationwide, but this pales in comparison to the 220,000 volunteers who help keep the parks open for business each year. The agency is divided into 7 regions, and the Midwest region, which covers parks in 19 states, is based in Omaha, Nebraska. Parks in this region, as well as throughout the country, are of many different types that I'd like to tell you about. Some types of parks are historical sites, sites that focus on cultural resource preservation, and the beautiful landscapes we know and love. An example of a historical site is the birthplace of President Herbert Hoover. This national park is located in West Branch, Iowa, along I-80, just outside of Iowa City. And then there's Pullman National Monument in Chicago. Last year, President Obama attended the opening of Pullman National Monument, which showcases a diverse neighborhood on the south side of Chicago that was ahead of its time, not only in urban planning, but in offering employment opportunities to African Americans working on the Pullman sleeper rail cars. One of the newest parks is the Manhattan Project National Historic Site. This park educates visitors about the United States' top-secret World War II program to design and build an atomic bomb. Besides historic sites, some parks focus on cultural resource preservation. So let me tell you what that means. An example is Knife River Indian Villages in North Dakota. This is an ancient Native American trading site that later served as a post for fur traders, and there you can find indigenous beadwork and pottery. At Pipestone National Monument in Minnesota, quarrying of the red pipestone discovered there by American Indians continues to this day. Although you may have thought that the national parks are all nature-made rather than man-made, the very logo of the Park Service is an arrowhead, man-made, but significant nonetheless. Let us not discount the beautiful landscapes that make the United States the envy of other nations. Parks that you're familiar with, such as the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Yosemite. And some of my personal favorites include Jewel Cave and Wind Cave in South Dakota, where what is above ground is just as majestic and interesting as what is found below. But you need not venture even as far as South Dakota to enjoy a national park, because we have some right here in Nebraska. These include Homestead National Monument, Scotts Bluff National Monument, and the Lewis and Clark Trail. Homestead National Monument is located in Beatrice, Nebraska. The Homestead Act of 1862 allowed many Americans, including some new immigrants, to acquire free land on the American frontier. At this park, you can experience an authentic homesteader cabin and schoolhouse, as well as preserved space for plants and animals, native plants and animals. Driving west from Omaha, Scottsbluff National Monument is hard to miss. In fact, this served as an important landmark for pioneers heading west to realize manifest destiny in the early 1800s. Rising 800 feet into the air, this dramatic rock formation sits along the Mormon Trail, the Oregon Trail, and other historic pathways. It's a steep climb to the top, but the view is worth it. This brings us to the Lewis and Clark Trail, a park that celebrates 33 people in their 2.5-year trek from the Missouri River to the Columbia River to map water pathways in the U.S. This national park actually spans 11 states, but its visitor center is right here in Omaha. It's located inside the Park Service Regional Headquarters, which sits along the Missouri Riverfront. I've told you some basic facts about the Park Service and about some of the different types of parks, and you know that some of those treasures are here in our own state. Although it takes an act of Congress to create a national park, the parks serve as a source of national pride for individuals and families coast to coast. In this, its centennial year, the Park Service and I encourage you to find your park. Thank you.